I'm kind of serving two masters here because on one hand I'm trying to do my model stuff, and on the other hand I have to lean right into the microphone um, to get it loud enough. So sorry. It struck him as curious that he could run at all on feet so frozen that he could not feel them as they struck the earth. It seemed as if he was skimming along the above the surface, having no connection with the earth. His theory of running until he reached camp and his friends had one flaw in it: he lacked endurance. Several times he stumbled, and finally he crumpled up and fell. When he tried to rise, he failed. He must sit and rest, he decided, and next time he would merely walk and keep on going. As he sat and regained his breath, he noted that he was feeling quite warm and comfortable. He was not shivering; it even seemed that a warm glow had come to his chest. And yet when he touched his nose or cheeks, there was no sensation. Running would not thaw them out, nor would it thaw out his hands and feet. Then the thought came to him that other parts of his body must now be freezing. He tried to keep this thought down, to forget it, to think of something else. He was aware of the panicky feeling that it caused, and he was afraid to panic, but the thought persisted until it produced a vision in his mind of his body totally frozen. This was too much, and he made another wild run along the trail. He slowed down to a walk, but the thought of the freezing extending through his body made him run again, and all the time the dog ran with him at his heels. When he fell down a second time, it curled its tail over its forefeet and sat in front of him, facing him, curiously eager and intent. The warmth and security of the animal angered him. He cursed it till it flattened down its ears. This time the shivering came more quickly upon the man. He was losing his battle with the frost. It was creeping into his body from all sides. The thought of it drove him on, but he ran no more than 100 feet when he staggered and pitched headlong to the ground. It was his last panic. When he recovered his breath and control, he sat up and in his mind entertained the concept of meeting death with dignity. His idea of it was that he had been making a fool of himself, running around like a chicken with its head cut off. Such was the image that occurred to him. Well, he was bound to freeze anyway, and he might as well take it decently. With this newfound peace of mind came the first glimmers of drowsiness. A good idea, he thought, to sleep off to death. It was like taking an anesthetic. Freezing was not as bad as people thought. There were a lot of worse ways to die. He pictured his friends finding his body the next day. Suddenly he imagined himself with them, coming along the trail and looking for himself. And still with them, he came around a turn in the trail and found himself lying in the snow. He did not belong with himself anymore, for even then he was out of himself, standing with his friends and looking at himself in the snow. It certainly was cold, was his thought. When he got back to the States, he could tell his friends what real cold was. He drifted on from this vision to the old-timer on Sulphur Creek. He could see him, quite clearly, warm and comfortable, smoking a pipe.
You were right, old-timer. You were right.
The man mumbled. Then he dozed off into what seemed to him the most comfortable and satisfying sleep he had ever known. The dog sat facing him and waiting. The brief day drew to a close in a long, slow twilight. There were no signs of a fire to be made. Never in the dog's experience had it known a man to sit like that in the snow and make no fire. As the twilight drew on, the dog's yearning for the fire took over. It whined softly and then flattened its ears down in anticipation of being scolded by the man. But the man remained silent. Later, the dog whined loudly, and still later, it crept close to the man and caught the scent of death. This made the animal bristle and back away. It waited a little longer, howling under the stars that danced and shone brightly in the cold sky. Then it turned and trotted up the trail in the direction of the camp it knew, where there were other food providers and fire providers. So, I want to do the book from cover to cover, but Ricky Tikki Tavi, the first story, involves a lot of voices, and I wanted to start out with this because it's spookier and also quieter to read. It's almost like reading Into the Wild, except Christopher McCandless is an irredeemable jerk. I hope you guys enjoyed it.